Okay, let us continue. Her boot tracks were surrounded by small systems of radial fractures. I thought Ares was a ram. I've literally been trying to remember. She was out away from the lander. The ground was a dark, rusty orange, covered with an even litter of rocks. Not kitty litter. No, Aries spelled like this. Right, there's two Aries. That's true, right? Oh my god. I couldn't think of that for like 2 weeks. Cause I was reading, I'm like Mars. I'm like, yes, the ancient Roman name for the god of war. And I'm like, what's the Actually, I got them confused. I was like, what's the Greek or I'm like, what's the Roman name? So what's the Greek name? Was it okay? See, I'm already breaking my vow not to say things anymore. That was the joke, DJ Mike. That's what I was joking about, but whatever. I've broken my vow to never speak on things, and it has already bit me in the ass. Blah, blah, blah. She is out away from the lander. The ground was a dark, rusty orange, covered with an even litter of rocks of the same color, although some of the rocks showed hints of red or black or yellow. To the east stood a number of rocket landing vehicles, each one a different shape and size. So, with the tops of more sticking over the eastern horizon. All of them were crusted in the same red-orange as the ground. It was an odd, thrilling sight, as if they had stumbled upon a long-abandoned alien spaceport. Parts of Bakener would look like this in a million years. She walked to one of the nearest landing vehicles, a freight container the size of a small house, set on a skeletal four-legged rocket assembly. It looked like it had been there for decades. The sun was overhead, too bright to look at even through her faceplate. It was hard to judge through the polarization and other filters, but it seemed to her that the daylight was much like that on Earth, as far as she could remember. A bright winter's day. She looked around again, trying to take it in. They stood on a gently bumpy plain, covered with small, sharp-edged rocks, all buried half in dust. All half buried in dust. Back to the west, the horizon was marked by a small, flat-topped hill. It might be a crater rim. It was hard to say. Anne was already halfway there, still quite a large figure. The horizon was closer than it seemed. Right. And Nadia paused to take note of that, suspecting that she would soon become accustomed to it and never notice. But it was not Earth-like. That strangely close horizon. She saw that clearly now. They stood on a smaller planet. She made a concerted effort to recall Earth's gravity, wondering that it should be so hard. walking in the woods, over tundra, on the river ice in winter. And now, step, step. The ground was flat, but one had to thread a course between the ubiquitous rocks. There was no place on Earth that she knew of where they were distributed so copiously and evenly. Take a jump. She did and laughed. Even with her suit on, she could tell she was lighter. She was just as strong as ever, but weighed only 30 kilos. And the 40 kilos of the suit, well, it threw her off balance. That was true. It made her feel like she had gone hollow. That was it. Her center of gravity was gone. Her weight had been shifted out to her skin, to the outside of her muscles rather than the inside. That was the effect of the suit, of course. Inside the habitats, it would be as it had been in the Ares. But out here in a suit, she was the hollow woman. With the aid of that image, she could suddenly move more easily, hop over a boulder, come down and take a turn, dance. Simply pop in the air, dance, land on top of a flat rock. Watch out. She tumbled, landed on a knee in both hands. Her gloves broke through the durry crust. It felt like a layer of caked sand at the beach, only harder and more brittle. Like hardened mud. And cold. With an exclamation mark. And cold. Their gloves weren't heated the way their boot soles were. And there wasn't enough insulation when actually touching the ground. It was like touching ice with bare fingers. Wow. Around 215 Kelvin, she recalled, or -90 centigrade. Colder than Antarctica. Colder than Siberia at its worst. Her fingertips were numb. They would need better gloves to be able to work. Gloves fitted with heating elements, like their boot soles. That would make the gloves thicker and less flexible. She'd have to get her finger muscles back into shape. (215 Kelvin, or as we call it, shorts weather. She had been laughing. She stood and walked to another freight drop, humming Royal Garden Blues. She climbed the leg of the next drop and rubbed the crust of red dirt off an engraved manifest on the side of the big metal crate. One John Deere Volvo Martian bulldozer. Hydrazine-powered, thermally protected, semi-autonomous, fully programmable. Prostheses and spare parts included. She felt her face stretched in a big grin. Backhoes, front loaders, bulldozers, tractors, graders, dump trucks, construction supplies and materials of every kind. Air miners to filter and collect chemicals from the atmosphere. Little factories to render these chemicals into other chemicals. Other factories To combine those chemicals, a whole commissary, everything they were going to need, all at hand in scores of crates scattered over the plain. She began to hop from one lander to the next, taking stock. Some of them had obviously hit hard. Some had their spider legs collapsed. Others had their bodies cracked. One was even flattened into a pile of smashed boxes, half buried in dust. But these were just another kind of opportunity. The salvage and repair game, one of her favorites. She laughed aloud. She was a bit giddy. She noticed the comm light on her wrist console blinking. She switched to the common band and was startled by Maya and Vlad and Sax talking all at once. "Where's Anne? You women get back here. Hey, Nadia, come help us with this damned habitat online. Nadia, come help us get this damned habitat online. We can't even get the door open." She laughed. I hope that wasn't the mac and cheese rocket shipment. Dude, it might have been. It's a bunch of smashed boxes. You know what I think when I hear boxes? Boxes of mac and cheese. Thank you, Mayan Mushala, for 21 months. And Maybe the Green. Thank you for 8 months. Or 40 months. Oh my god. Anyways, about that math degree that I have. Thank you for 40 months. She laughed. The habitats were scattered like everything else. The habitats were scattered like everything else. But they had landed near one that they knew was functional. It had been turned on from orbit some days before and run through a complete check. Unfortunately, the outer lock door could not be included in the check, and it was stuck. Nadia went to work on it, grinning. It was odd to see what looked like a derelict trailer home sporting a space station locked door. It only took a minute for her to get it open, by tapping out the emergency open code while pulling out on the door. Stuck with cold, differential shrinking perhaps. They were going to have a lot of little problems like that. Then she and Vlad were into the lock, and then inside the habitat. It still looked like a trailer home, but with the latest in kitchen fixtures. All the lights were on. The air was warm and circulating well. The control panel looked like a nuclear power plant's. While the others came inside, Nadia walked down a row of small rooms, through door after door. And the oddest feeling suddenly came over her. Things seemed out of place. The lights were on, some of them blinking, and down at the far end of the hall, a door was swinging slightly back and forth on its hinges. Obviously, the ventilation. and the shock of the habitat's landing probably had disarranged things slightly. She shook off the feeling and went back to greet the others. Ooh, it's so exciting. Is it the cabbage ghost, or is it just my imagination? Rusted Organs? I don't know if you just got here, but good to see you. Yeah, don't tell Maya. By the time everyone had landed and walked across the stony plain, stopping, stumbling, running, staring off at the horizon, spinning slowly, walking again, and had entered into the 3 functioning habitats, and had gotten out of their EVA suits and put them away, and checked out the habitats, and eaten a bit, talking it all over the whole while, night had fallen. They continued working on the habitats and talking through most of that night, too excited to fall asleep. Then most of them slept in snatches until dawn, when they woke up and suited up and went out again, looking around and checking manifests and running machines through checks. Eventually, they noticed they were famished and went back in to jam down a quick meal. And then it was night again. And that was what it was like for several days. A wild swirl of time passing. Nadia would wake to the bip of her wrist console and eat a quick breakfast looking out of the habitat's little east window. Dawn stained the sky, rich berry colors, for a few minutes, before shifting rapidly through a series of rosy tones into the thick pink-orange of daytime. All over the floor of the habitat, her companions slept, on mattresses that would fold up against the wall during the day. The walls were beige, tinted orange by the dawn. The kitchen and living room were tiny. The 4 toilet rooms, no more than closets. Anne would stir as the room lightened and go to one of the 4 toilets. John was already in the kitchen, moving around quietly. Conditions were so much more crowded and public than they had been on the Aries, that some of them were having trouble adjusting. Every night, Maya complained that she couldn't sleep in such a crowd. But there she was, mouth open girlishly. She would be the last to rise, snoozing through the noise and bustle of the others' morning routines. Then the sun would crack the horizon, and Nadia would be done with her cereal and milk. The milk made of powder mixed with water mined from the atmosphere. It tasted just the same. And it was time to get to her walker. It was time to get into her walker and out to work. Mars milk. Martian milk water. And it was time to get into her walker and out to work. The walkers were designed for the Martian surface and were not pressurized like spacesuits, but were rather made of an elastic mesh which held in the body at about the same pressure that the Terran atmosphere would have. This prevented the severe expansion bruising that would result if skin were exposed to Mars' minimal atmosphere. But it gave the wearer a lot more freedom of movement than a pressurized spacesuit would have. Walkers also had the very significant advantage of being fail operational. Only the hard helmet was airtight. So, if you ripped a hole at the knee or elbow, you would have a badly bruised and frozen patch of skin, but would not suffocate and die within minutes. How clever. It's fail operational. That's what they call me. Yeah, if you think about it, a big book is just like 3 small books together. So if you can read 3 small books, you could read 1 big book. You know, you just gotta pace yourself. It's Pace Yourself 2024. Anyways, getting into a walker, however, was a workout in itself. Nadia wriggled the pants over her long underwear, and then the jacket, and zipped the 2 sections of the suit together. After that, she jammed into big thermal boots and locked their top rings to the suit's ankle rings. Pulled on gloves and locked the wrist rings. Put on a fairly standard hard helmet and locked it into the suit's neck ring. Then shouldered into an air tank backpack and linked its air tubes to her helmet. She breathed hard a few times, tasting the cool oxygen nitrogen in her face. The walker's wrist pad indicated that all the seals were good, and she followed John and Samantha into the lock. They closed the inner door, and the air was sucked back into containers. John unlocked the outer door. The 3 of them stepped outside.